Good afternoon. You're listening to EdNation on CastleRockRadio.com. I'm Chris Cutter. I'm going to be joined by Dan McMinimee shortly enough. So we'll be talking about a lot of stuff, Douglas County School District and nationwide. First, you know, we've had a lot of opportunity to interview people on the show and actually talk about ways that we truly work to recognize staff within a school district. And this past weekend, we actually had an opportunity to do what I would compare to other districts I've been in as the finest recognition ceremony, a true gala. There were probably close to 1,000 people. There was recognitions for world-class instruction, secondary, elementary, partners that work with the district from private agencies. And wanted to go through the list just to give them one last shout out because as you have heard various times, we do not do enough to recognize so many great people, and we have a staff of a little over 7,000 in Douglas County. This was the 8th one, and I'll tell you, because I've had a chance to go to the last 3, it's the best one so far. Some of the awards that have come out, World Class Educator went to Russell Oakes. Now, you got to remember, world-class educator is something that I think every district is wrestling with, trying to figure out what world-class means. And if you take it on its merits, it's basically a great adjective to talk about the highest level possible. We talk about preparing kids for a global stage. Well, it takes educators that can do that to get them there, and Russell certainly has done that. One of the nice things, he's a language arts teacher over at Mountain Ridge Middle School in Highlands Ranch. And, you know, I've had a chance to talk with him a few times. Truly an innovative guy, very humorous. And what's nice is the recognition's not only for him, and he certainly does put in the work, but the school gets an opportunity to really relish in the fact that he's there and he brings back a few dollars. You know, the school will actually have an opportunity to talk about how the school can really improve what they need in the monetary way of about $15,000. So congratulations, Russell. Now, if you were listening to Let's Talk Education with Dr. Liz Fagan, you had an opportunity to hear from a couple of the other people who were recognized. First of all, from Sedalia Elementary, the elementary teacher of the year was Shannon Tafoya. She's a 5th grade teacher, and what I truly appreciated about reading about her and getting a chance to see her in action was she's very honest in the sense that about 5 years ago, she wasn't the teacher embracing technology. She kids with herself now that she's come, you know, completely around. And if you were listening the last hour, she was talking about her dream of having technology in the hands of kids one-on-one, and taking a little step further, even that 24/7 access to information and learning. So congratulations from her. The secondary recipient for Educator of the Year from Rock Canyon was actually a guest on our show back a little while ago. Her name's Chandra Fordham. If you recall, she was the one that basically took kids on a tour of a biotech lab. That's what she teaches, biotechnology and honors biology. And she did a nice little webcast. You know, you can't really get a whole classroom of kids into a lab. I mean, I don't think they have enough hazmat suits to begin with, but even if they did, you got to think about contamination and certainly all the care. And, you know, I have this picture of walking into a chamber and then getting, you know, doused by, you know, the gas that shoots out that's all white, and, you know, it's kind of like a sci-fi movie, but you can virtually, and she's done that. And one of the things that I remember asking her when she was on the show was, you know, how do you stay ahead of this? How do you personally keep on top of technology? And you can't tell on radio, but she kind of gave me a funny look with a smile and simply stated, I don't. I can't. Kids these days are so adept at it, so in front of it, that all she does is make it available. She gives them license to use it, license to access it. And, you know, I think she was being a little humble. I mean, she actually credited one of her students for setting up the whole Skype tour of the biotech lab at one point. But I think she's probably like a lot of our teachers, just playing it down a little bit. So. This year we actually added an award. Early Childhood Educator of the Year went to Leslie Gresham at Parker's Pioneer Elementary. What I like about this is Dan and I have talked, and we always will throw out the research when we hear it or find it or it's sent to us on how important early interventions are. And having a quality instructional environment for 3 and 4-year-olds, which is early childhood education, is so important. They've tracked so many studies. Have tracked kids that have had an opportunity to be in a high-quality environment in preschool to 3rd grade, 5th grade, and 8th grade state assessments throughout the nation. And it always comes back that those kids who have the opportunity to be in a learning environment at a young age are always more proficient, further along than the kids that don't get that opportunity. We're going to move on and talk in a few minutes about school finance, and there's a part of that in there as well. Now, this year we did a School Employee of the Year. That went to Karen Johnson, Castle Rock, South Ridge IB Elementary. She's actually an educational aide, and she has a very diverse background. She was in mechanical engineering. She did retail and senior care, and now she finds herself as an aide in one of our schools. And it just shows you how fortunate we are to have some of the great people in our district who have chosen to pursue what it is that they're passionate about. Even as a 2nd, 3rd, and of course for Karen, a 4th or 5th career. Our Administrative Employee of the Year this year was a nurse consultant named Celia Flanagan. She is part of the district's severe brain trauma team. She works to protect children who've suffered concussions. And, Dan, who's just joining me now, welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Chris.
Dan was a high school principal, and I'll tell you, it's more prevalent at high school, but there's no school that's not felt the impact of school concussions and that sort of stuff.
Well, and I think the bigger picture is, too, even students that are out like snowboarding on the weekend or participating in
or my
skateboarding, all that stuff is those issues still come into the school, and you have to address those when a student is temporarily hurt by those.
Yeah, and it's too bad it's taken so long, but there have been recent national, well-known sports people who have really brought attention to this, and it's great. We need this. We need to be protecting our young athletes, and I'm not sure of the data. We've heard this before, but I think it's like girls soccer is one of the highest.
And cheerleading. Girls soccer and cheerleading are the 2 highest, I believe.
I mean, because you think of hockey and football and some of these real, I would say even lacrosse. I know they're wearing helmets, but that's a tough sport when you get to high school.
Well, I think the other thing is you're absolutely right. Lacrosse, they're wearing helmets, but on the girls, they're not.
No.
But I think the other thing is we do know that there's an impact to students and how well they can perform when they've had something like this go on. So, I don't know if you got into this before I got in here, but kind of a little bird walk off to the side of this is we do what's called impact testing, and we have a internationally known expert. Peter Thompson is a fabulous person that has a wealth of knowledge around concussions. But anyway, this impact testing for all of our athletes. So we have a baseline score. So when a student does have something happen to them during a game or a practice or whatever, we have something we can go back to so we can be absolutely positively sure that they're not putting themselves at risk. They can't go back to practice or games until they pass that impact test at the level where they first started.
We should probably bring this back at some point and talk about it more, because I think
cool.
I think parents would feel a lot better if they knew how how concerned we are for this,
it's very serious.
Yeah, how serious we take this. All right, so congratulations to Celia Flanagan. And Dan, I was at the last one, Douglas County Administrator of the Year, recognized this weekend at our Apple Awards, Karen Tarbell, and she was actually just here on with Dr. Liz Fagan.
Yeah, what a great talent she is.
So now the sad thing is she's retiring this year. She has a long history in Douglas County. She's been a principal for many years, not just at Cimarron, but she was at Sierra before that, right?
Correct.
And
Parker Vista Middle School before that. I believe she was at Chaparral High School as they were opening up Sierra Middle School. She was a part of that. So she's been to a lot of places. She's impacted a lot of people, obviously. I mean, a lot of our current principals were assistant principals with her that learned the craft under her.
Yeah.
And so she's been not only a great principal, but she's been a great developer of other principals.
So I was saying how great the Apple Awards are. I've had an opportunity to work in a number of districts, and this I don't know of any district that does it as well as Douglas County. Just the sheer elegance of it, the importance of it. And I thought this year's ceremony had a nice tempo to it. Mm-hmm. I liked the videos of the winners and the chance that people got to see right into their classroom, and the candidness and the humility and the humor that came out in last weekend's winners.
Yeah, I can't really add anything to that. It's a great event.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you to the corporate sponsors who are generous to help us put on such a great event. At some point, maybe, Randy, we can do a shout-out at today's show on who they were so that we truly do recognize them. All right. So, Dan, I wanted to jump in, if you don't mind, to school finance. Now, I know we talk Douglas County, we talk state, and we also talk national, but this time I kind of just want to talk here in Colorado. I want to talk school finance and really what it means for us. I know we have a broad listening base, but a core of them are Douglas County group, and I think it's interesting to talk about how this would be. Now, you and I recognize that school finance isn't perfect. In fact, the more we learn about it, right, the more we find how complex it is and how limiting it is and how difficult it is to navigate in sort of a pool of equitable funding. And people can research these things, but things that come up, Referendum C, which was passed a few years ago, that's kind of time limited. You've got Amendment 23, you've got the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, and then you've got Gallagher here in this state that really work kind of to handcuff any sort of political measures.
Well, and I think the other thing that's happened is over time, it's been kind of put together in a fashion that it's like adding an addition to your house.
Yeah.
It's maybe not the same color, doesn't have the same carpet.
Electrical's newer.
Exactly. I think what's happened is over time, well-intentioned people, have tried to put pieces in there that would solve issues for specific groups of people, but it's ended up counteracting the work that's been done before or the work that's to come in the future. So you start talking about Gallagher and Tabor and Amendment 21 and all those things. It's a little messy right now, and I think everybody's recognized that, and I think that's what Senator Johnston was doing, was saying, look, we know there's an issue of all these things that are going on that are being counterproductive to what we're trying to do. Let's try and reformat what this looks like.
And he's not alone. There are people that the last couple of years have been really trying to get something moving. So kudos to him for actually getting something out there. And by no means is anything I'm going to say a criticism of him, because I thank him for drawing attention to this, and I think that it's something that's going to need to be dealt with in the next few years for sure. And this was a great way to do it. Now, let's throw out a few facts around it, just so everyone's got some of the creative ideas that have gone into this is high school has a number of part-time students, whether they are just taking a couple of classes at the beginning, or they're homeschool and they're connected, or they are maybe in their fifth year and just trying to get a couple. There's a component to not getting full funding for those students that don't come full fine. This bill actually would give full-time per pupil revenue, would pay districts full for those part-time students at high school. So that's nice.
That is nice. We like that. Same
thing with the other end of the spectrum, kindergarten. Right now, if kindergarten was 1.0, we get paid 0.58, right?
Right.
They want to make that 1.0 as well, so give full funding for the kindergarten folks.
So potentially we could then have full-day kindergarten free to any student that wanted to participate in that.
Exactly. And there's an effort with early childhood to get more 4-year-old enrollments and to help that process. So there's some benefits. We're going to go to a break. When I come back, I want to talk about some of the other language that's in there that people are going to have to understand if they're going to make a decision. And let's talk about the decision that might be coming in November.
Let's do it.
All right. You're listening to EdNation with Dan and Chris on CastleRockRadio.com.
Carry on my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest.
Welcome back to Castle Rock Radio. This is Dan and Chris and EdNation. When we left, Chris, we were talking a little bit about this
Yeah.
bill to try to fix the finance in Colorado.
You're right. I mean, there's going to be a bill floated on the floor of the House, and right now I think it's 144 pages, and that tells more of its comprehensiveness than anything else. I mean, the senator who's behind this has really taken a proactive approach to getting out and talking to people, and some of the positives we were talking about was full per pupil funding for full-day kindergarten, for part-time students at high school, half-day preschool. I wanted to include that, you've got a bigger focus on at-risk students, English language learners, special ed, and I'm not afraid to come out and say that it does cost more to educate kids that need more services. I mean, that just makes sense.
Right.
So I totally understand that. Here's some of the realities, certainly with Douglas County. One other thing that's interesting about it is our current formula takes into account certain categorical factors and things like that, but there's also weights. Weighting the per pupil you get that benefit us because, one, we're a large district. So one of the weights we get is just about being a large district. Another one, which is even more influential on the dollars we get, and we've stated, and everybody knows, Douglas County gets the least amount of money of any, school district in the greater Denver area. But the other one would be the cost of living, because, and this is really, staff living in the community, having a higher cost of living, therefore the pupil funding going up a little bit. Well, the formula talks about getting rid of those two factors. Just to give you some example math, let's say we get $6,400 per student. The cost of living adjustment and the large district account for about $1,500 of that $6,400. So if you eliminate those, you immediately come down. Now, one of the buffering aspects of the bill is that they are going to add $600 per student. So if you look at the net, 6,400 minus 1,500 plus 600, you're still down 900, nearly
$5,500.
Nearly $1,000 per student.
And in our district with 60,000 kids, that's
millions.
Like
50,
60 million?
Yeah, 50 something, you're right.
Yeah.
So that is a concern, of course. Now, the remedy to that would be they would allow us to go to the taxpayers and ask them to pay for the difference. Kind of hard to probably pass something where you're not really getting anything, you're just breaking even.
Well, and I think one of the other challenges is that, as I understand it, under the current scenario, there's only a percentage that you can ask your taxpayers to fund.
25.
So some of school districts around us are at that cap, where Douglas County is less than half, the last number I remember seeing,
Right.
less than half of what we could ask our community, we actually ask our community for. So let's, District X, they've already asked their community as much as they can out of tax. What do they do if they're lower funded? Is there a fix to that?
There is small caveats. You can go from 25% to 27%. So they'll give you another 2% that you could go back and ask your taxpayers.
But the challenge is going to be is if I'm already asking for 25%, is that 2% enough to cover the loss that I would have from this other side?
And you're and quite honestly, what you're asking for is just to break even. It's not to do
Right.
anything new or better.
And the other challenge is if you're in a district that has never asked or doesn't feel like that's the right thing to ask for that much, now you're sitting in a place where, okay, we've only asked for 8% or 10% over the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to ask to raise that up to 27. So in effect, you would double people's taxes.
Right. There's a few pieces in there that need to be kind of spoken out around this. And one is that there's I think, and I don't know the numbers, but roughly 176 school districts in Colorado, and about 24 of them are negatively impacted when you actually apply this new formula. Douglas County certainly is one of those for the reasons we're discussing. There would be a hold harmless clause until probably, I think it's 2020 or somewhere around there, certainly a number of years, but 2020 is going to come. And
Quickly.
Yeah.
I think this is what people were talking about when they passed Gallagher and passed Tabor was,
yeah.
The sunset's way out
Yeah.
there. And then all of a sudden we're sitting there going,
Here we go.
Well, what do we do?
It's like the fiscal cliff at the new year. I mean, it does come.
Let's don't go back
the day does arrive.
Right.
One of the other components that I think is very interesting is people always ask, what's the local share versus the state share? State share of funding has been 64%. Local share is 36%. In the bill, they're looking at kind of doing a modified Rhode Island model, which would be a shared. and it would be an influenced percentages. So you'd start at 64% state, 36% local, and depending on three factors, it would move either more state or less state, meaning more local share or less local share. The criteria is concerning to Douglas County residents because the criteria are assessed value, which a lot of the assessed value in Douglas County is high, median district income, again, which is high, right. And then the number of at-risk or free and reduce or pockets of low income that exist, which is very low in Douglas County. So all three of those factors would increase the local share. So when you're talking about the difference going to the, coming to the taxpayer for the difference, now not only are we paying the difference of getting less PPR, but we're probably asking our local taxpayer base to pay more of a share under this new formula.
Well, I think there's going to be some challenges as we move forward, for sure. But again, what you started off with the top of this conversation is we appreciate people looking at this and trying to work through it. I think we all know that what is initially presented is not what it's going to look like in the end. I hope that there is some discussions about how this could impact all school districts and all schools, and that those discussions are favorable to everyone. I mean, I don't begrudge.
No, not at all.
Money's going to all districts. I do think that you want to try to get this to the place where it's a win-win for everybody involved. And I don't think it's quite there yet.
Well, and I was hoping we'd get to exactly that point. Here is an opportunity to really educate the mass around the challenges with school finance and appropriately paying for a child's education. I really do believe as we move forward, and let's just say the bill as it is currently drafted goes through the House and the Senate. It will go to the taxpayers on the ballot in November, and they'll have a chance. And I think, there's a range, but we're talking basically about $1 billion tax hike.
And I think we brought that up a couple months ago. I think we started talking about what this potentially could look like as we were folding this out of, they're going to think about passing something. If that passes through, then it has to go to the general public for a successful measure that would say, okay, we agree with that and we want to fund that.
Yeah, so we're too late for this year because they're going to try to wrap up in the next month the School Finance Act and such. So we're going to be funded the same way we have been funded for the last few years next year.
Additional dollars, though. We're getting a little additional.
Well, and the governor's projections and economic forecast has come back, and it does look like we'll be getting additional dollars, like everybody else. So, there's those great things. But could you imagine if we actually do start having these conversations statewide because it's on the ballot, whether it gets approved or not, there will be some rich interjection. There'll be some rich conversation. And it's really easy for somebody in an educational field or an onlooker just to say, well, you're not even financing it fully right now. You're already like $2 billion less than it should be. Why don't you just first try to finance it right before you try to fix it? We're not saying that the current system's perfect either.
Right. And I think that's what they're talking about is in order to get people to say, we want to finance that, you have to build the system that people go, I can buy into that.
Yeah. A national election's always fun because you certainly get caught up in the politics and the campaigning of this. I have a sense that this will probably take on a life similar to a national political campaign.
Yes.
Yes. You're leaving it at yes?
Go there. Okay, I wanted to bring an update. Colorado State Wrestling Tournament this last weekend. We had several students from Douglas County participate in that at the 5A level. And as we talked about before, very successful wrestling programs, including Ponderosa High School, 10 state championships in several years.
Amazing.
Yeah. So Ponderosa finishes second this year, and I think there were some people that were disappointed. I'm very, very proud. That bar of excellence to try to keep it there. Second place is a great accomplishment.
Not in Douglas County,
great accomplishment.
In the state.
They were basically, it looks like, about one student away from being the state champs as a team. However, they did have two guys that were champions of their weight class, which if you think about all of the wrestlers that weigh about 170 pounds at high school, think about the competition there. Between the 140 and 170 is in general where most of the population lives in high school. So Dylan Gable winning the 170-pound weight class is a significant accomplishment, as Corey Williams winning it at 182. So we had two Ponderosa wrestlers win the state championship, and we had another student from Thunder Ridge, I believe, Yes, it was Thunder Ridge. Kendall Rutz, I hope I said his name right, was second at 113 pounds. So some great wrestling this last weekend. Ponderosa second place, Chaparral ninth place. We had 6 teams that went down there and scored points. So a lot of good wrestling in Douglas County. That was one update.
Yeah.
Got time for one more?
Well, I mean, that's what happened. What's coming?
Well, what's coming is the 5A girls and boys basketball championships.
Which you and I, we love this time of the year.
Absolutely love it. So last night they opened up with the girls basketball brackets, and we had Legend High School playing against Chatfield. And unfortunately, they lost, but they qualified for state and played a first-round game last night. We also had Mountain Vista. They played George Washington last night, and they won, so they're actually going to play Friday night against Palmer. We had Castleview High School. Shout out to Castleview High School. I think this is their first time that their girls basketball program, I believe, qualified for the state tournament, and they won their game, so they're going to be playing Saturday night as well. In addition, we had Highlands Ranch is number 1 in their region seeded, Thunder Ridge number 2 in their region, and let's see, Chaparral High School is ranked number 3 in their region, Rock Canyon number 4 in their region. So we had 4 teams that got a first-round bye, it looks like, to be able to play on Friday night. So we'll come back with the boys a little bit later.
Oh, yeah.
But
and
great basketball in
And
our
just so
district as
people can
well.
put it on their calendars, next weekend is the Great 8. And it is 4 games, the last 8 teams back-to-back at the
That's right.
Coliseum.
It's at the Coliseum.
And it is one full day of just amazing boys basketball.
Games start about 3 o'clock. Well, the girls is the day before. So the girls basketball the day before, I believe, and the boys the day after that.
And we'll certainly update as this goes on.
I think it's Thursday and Friday is the way you do it.
This is much better than March Madness.
Yes, it is.
You're listening to EdNation. We're going to go to a break and come back and start talking some national stuff. This is Dan and Chris on CastleRockRadio.com.
Welcome back to Castle Rock Radio with Dan and Chris. When we left the show, we were talking about wrestling and girls basketball. I wanted to give you an update on the state swimming. Girls swimming was 2 weeks ago, I believe. Let me give you some quick scores here, Chris, because we had a lot of kids participate in that as well. Chaparral High School, 7th place in the state. Rock Canyon, 10th. Thunder Ridge, 17th. Legend, 20th. Castleview and Highlands Ranch, top 30. So a lot of good action there. In the individual events, 200-yard medley relay, Chaparral was 3rd. Rock Canyon was 7th. In the 200 intermediate, Morgan Stepp from Castleview was 7th. 50 freestyle, Annie Ochitwa, I hope I said your name correctly, from Thunder Ridge was 2nd. Abigail Kokovar from Rock Canyon, 3rd. And Megan Greyer from Chaparral was 7th. In diving, Ashley Peterson was 3rd. And Kathleen Badillo from Legend was 6th. 100 butterfly, Madeline Lacey, Rock Canyon, 5th. The 100 freestyle, Annie Ochitwa, and I hope I said your name, I apologize, from Thunder Ridge, 3rd. Abigail Kokovar from Rock Canyon, 6th. 500 freestyle, Allison Arnold, Legend, 6th. 100 backstroke, McKenna Wilson from Chaparral was 4th. So a lot of great performances at the state swim meet 2 weekends ago, and congratulations to all these students.
Yeah, and that's just the girls. I know the seasons are broken up.
The boys is in the springtime.
Yeah.
So we'll come back with those results later.
All right. So, it's funny about just high school sports. I got a 10-year-old, and he's already looked up the CHASA schedule of sports just to know which sports conflict so that he doesn't put any time into ones that he can't play when he gets there. So, football and swimming seem to be his 2 first choices, and they don't necessarily overlap. So he's okay for now.
Good. That's good. That shows good thinking as well. Planning ahead.
Do you want to let's finish up? Let's talk about boys basketball.
Yeah, the boys basketball gets started this evening, and tonight over at Legend High School, they're going to be playing Rocky Mountain High School in a first-round game. Chaparral is playing Brighton, and Castleview High School travels to Arapahoe High School tonight. Rock Canyon High School travels to Fort Collins, and Highlands Ranch is hosting a first-round game this evening versus Mullen. Into the second round, Mountain Vista was a number 1 seed, so they are awaiting the winner of Pine Creek and Abraham Lincoln tonight. They'll play on Saturday. And Thunder Ridge was a number 3 seed in their region, and they will be awaiting the winner of Overland and Rampart. That's at 2 o'clock on Saturday. So a home game at Mountain Vista, 7 o'clock Saturday. A home game at Thunder Ridge, 2 o'clock. You could do a 2-for-1 Saturday afternoon up on Highlands Ranch. In addition, you can go catch a couple games tonight over in Parker.
And, girls, boys, basketball, these are great games.
Yeah.
I catch a couple a year, and I'll tell you, they are just exciting.
Well, and you know what's really awesome from my perspective as a former principal was these are the games that kids, you always have the games like the Legend Chaparral or Legend Ponderosa. Or
the rivalry games.
The rivalry games where you get a lot of kids, but these games kids come out to as well because they see it on television. They think, that's cool. So
and you see the kids getting into it because you'll see kids from other teams coming and kind of checking out the competition ahead of time.
That's exactly right.
Doing their own little scouting.
Yep.
People that don't think they take it serious are wrong.
Absolutely.
Quality players are actually really invested in this at this time of the
year.
And,
basketball over the last 5 years in Colorado has really elevated too, both boys and girls. We've always had great girls programs. You look at some of the students from Douglas County that have gone on and played in quality girls programs, Connecticut, Boston College, places like that. But the boys have really elevated in the last few years. So it's been really neat to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'll be fun to see how it turns out. So we'll try to keep people informed. All right, so, a little while ago, the president gave his State of the Union speech, and long speech, a lot of stuff in there, but a couple of things I wanted to throw out at you and just kind of get your thoughts on. First of all, college and career readiness. Now, this is what he said. I'm announcing a new challenge to redesign America's high schools so there are better equipped graduates for the skills today that employers are looking for and all in all. Let me sum up. He wants to launch a race to the top style competition among schools for dollars to focus on getting kids ready for post-secondary in the workforce.
Hey, bring it on. I love that idea. I love the race to the top notion, although I hope they don't have some of the same qualifiers that they had. But any money that people want to infuse into our schools to help us further prepare students, this isn't a new notion. This has been as long as I've been in high school administration. So, 15, 20 years, this has been a topic of, how are we preparing kids for what's next for them? And I think that, any money that people want to put towards that, we would gladly take that and continue to improve our programs. We have a lot of really cool things that happen in our schools for students, but there's a lot more we could be doing.
So I'm going to kind of birdwalk a little here. You just got a chance to see High Tech High.
I did.
So how do you fold that into this conversation?
Well, the most impressive thing about High Tech High for me was one sentence that the founder of that school said.
Now, and for those that don't know, High Tech High is a very innovative, modern school in San Diego.
It's in San Diego. It's been around for about 10 years. It was the result of I believe, a person that was high up in Qualcomm was trying to hire engineers and couldn't find quality candidates. So he said, I'm going to make my own.
Here's a private guy,
right?
Private industry,
right?
Looking to hire high school, college graduates and not being able to.
Right. And so he said, I think I can make something happen here.
Not career or college ready.
That's correct. That's what was his frustration was he was upset that he couldn't find these quality people to hire.
Yeah.
And so what he did was he went and created some partnerships, and it ended up with a charter school. I believe it's a public charter school in California called High Tech High. Now, before you go out there, charter, public, private, all that
Google.
stuff. I'm not even going to go there because I think what this school really did was it met a need for a group of students in a specific place. And I think that's what we should really be about. It's not about public or private or charter versus neighborhood. It's are we giving the resources to schools so that we can meet the need?
Are we doing
schools?
right by kids?
Exactly. And I'll leave that piece there. But anyway, they create this school, about 400 students in their high school program. Now, since they first started this about 10 years ago, I believe it was, they've added an elementary school and a middle school to this campus. And if you've been to San Diego, right north of the airport, there's an inlet that goes in. It's where the United States Navy used to have a shipyard, basically. And within that, it's a training facility. They had all these buildings, and I think all those buildings about 15 or 20 years ago in San Diego were in disarray. Abandoned, fences around them and stuff. Well, they go in there and start renovating these buildings, and now it's really taken on a life of its own. There's restaurants in there, there's shopping, there's, residential area, there's, financial places, and there's right in the middle of all of this is High Tech High. It's in 4 different buildings, which led to a really interesting conversation with the kids when we were walking around about safety, security, that kind of stuff. Because there's all types of people going through there at all hours of the day. So anyway, the focus of the school, we got to go out there. It was really exciting. Obviously, it snowed on Sunday, so we didn't get there till 3 o'clock on Monday morning because of our flights got delayed. So we had a nice nap and got up and went over to High Tech High and spent the day over there. And it was myself, Dr. Fagan, Dr. Jim Calhoun, principal at Castleview High School, and one other teacher, Vince Peretti. He's a math teacher over at the high school. Well, there was 2 other teachers that were supposed to be with us on Sunday, but when they canceled our flight, they had to get reshuffled. So they actually came on Monday evening and stayed part of yesterday and came home this morning. But the Reader's Digest version, now that I've given you the long version, the one sentence that the founder of this school said that was so profound to me was around making sure that kids are taking care of production, not consumption.
Right.
And what his whole discussion was about was, what is it that you try to achieve in classrooms? And it was about, we don't want kids to sit there and sit and get. It's heart and hands. It's trying to get kids to take the information that they're getting and use that in new and innovative ways for a product, for an audience. So it wasn't just, I'm going to do this paper for my teacher. It's I'm going to do this book, or I'm going to make this, you name it. I'm going to do this for someone else, for a entrepreneur. I'm going to do this for a group of 6th graders at an elementary school. I'm going to do this for somebody else bigger than my teacher. And what they found is that really has a rich effect on student work. And you can walk around their school, and there is student work all over the school. Some of it's really awesome.
Right.
And they have partnerships with community members internationally, with doing research for hospitals, and really it's also really kid driven. So one of the coolest pieces we saw when we were there is we went into, when you're a senior, you can take one of 2 classes. They can take 5 at a time, but one of those 2 has to be either advanced engineering or advanced multimedia. And so then they have 3 other classes. But in that class, they have a 2-hour block every single day. And in this engineering class we were in, there was 3 kids in there that were putting together this, they call it a quadricopter. And it's a 4-bladed helicopter prototype. Think drone. Okay.
Right.
And what they were doing was they were taking this project, and they'd done all the research about forest fires and what's the potentially the most damaging piece, and found out that, hot spots was a big problem with forest fires, especially in California. So these kids thought, well, what if we could develop this helicopter or this quadricopter that could hover over and has an infrared indicator on it, and could go over these forest fires and find these hot spots and then transmit back the GPS coordinates so that they could send in the fire department to put out those hot spots. So these kids did all this research. They had this prototype, a little teeny one that they had been working on, and now they were starting to get all of their big pieces, to put this whole thing together. A computer piece that was going to go on the top, the infrared indicator piece, they built the copter to see if it would fly, and they're actually going to take that at the end of this. And mind you, these kids are telling us this whole story. It took them about 5 minutes to go through all the research they did, all the math, science, engineering, social studies, blah, 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 that it brought this all together into one package. And they're going to take this to the fire department and go, hey, would you like to invest in this? Because they truly believe that this is going to be something that the fire department is going to go, heck yeah, we'd love to have 20 of those that we could fly over these, have people fly over these and indicate where these hot spots are so we can send teams in to go take care of those hot spots.
I love that let's say it again. It's not consumption, it's production.
That's right.
Right? The visual you could draw, and this is in complete vein of Sir Ken Robinson, would be a kid with his head tilted back, his mouth wide open, and just shoveling stuff in. The consumption piece is what we've mastered in a 20th century environment. This whole production piece you can talk about with problem-based learning. Another one and I'll just throw this out because we're going to go to a break in about 45 seconds here. Another one of those wonderful little things is at the elementary level, there was a great activity I saw in a classroom where, do you remember a few years ago when the Titanic was huge and everybody was talking about that? Well, it was a problem posed to 4th fourth graders on saving more lives with the Titanic. And what they realized is they could have actually just tied all the lifeboats together and thrown all the deck chairs in the middle of the lifeboats in a circle. And they could have saved almost every single person on those floating deck chairs surrounded by those lifeboats if they had done it that way.
And the kids figured that out.
And fourth grade.
Awesome.
All right, you're listening to EdNation with Dan and Chris on CastleRockRadio.com. We'll be right back. Good afternoon. You're listening to EdNation with Dan and Chris. Sorry, we got about 10 minutes. You want to see how many we can get through?
Well, I did want to loop back one last thought about High Tech High. You know, I think it was really exciting to see a group of people get to work toward a common goal. And that's, you know, that happens in a lot of our schools, but it gets hard when you're huge to make that happen. And so, you know, I would say that I think that there's pieces of that we can use in our school district, and that's the value of going somewhere. Is you see somebody doing something, and it makes you start thinking 1,000 miles an hour about how we can better serve all the students that we have, not just a small group, but all of them.
Yeah. All right, so let me throw a few things out at you. Comment as well. So it turns out that we've heard that, you know, all these high school graduates go to college and they need remedial classes. Well, new research has found that those are actually overstated. So
what a surprise.
In your face, higher ed.
Well, I don't think in your face, but I think we all realized along the way that part of that was driven by finances. I mean, if I take a student and say, you have to take a remedial course and it's not going to count toward your bachelor's degree, now you still have 128 hours, but you're still paying me the tuition dollars, that makes a difference. And I think the other thing it says is how much of the stuff we're teaching is retained. Because if you recall, most of those entry-level things, they're driven on some kind of specific test that kid's given during their summer between their senior year and their freshman year. And they go in and it looks like this. They give them a math test. And on that test, they have to demonstrate knowledge. And if they can't recall what they learned in ninth grade algebra, then they're not going to do very well on that test. And so I think that's part of what was happening as well.
Well, in a continuation of just the higher ed thought, there is now a program, and it's in Tennessee, with the dozens of colleges are actually using the data in a new program that will actually not only help students determine what they should take, but it actually predicts how well they'll do based on the culmination of data they have coming out of high school.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you got to be looking at is the body of evidence. Can this kid be successful now? That said, you do want to make sure that the class you do put them in college, they can be successful.
Right.
So.
Well, and it's kind of funny because it comes up like an app on your phone and it gives you 5 stars for you're going to knock this out of the park, likely, or 1 star, this is going to be very difficult for you. So it's kind of interesting. All right. New study suggests that helping teenagers understand how people change in different situations can reduce their hostility.
So looking outside of your narcissistic self?
Yes. So
Perfect.
Does that fall under the Mike Ditka, come on, man?
Come on, man. Yeah.
All right. More research from the National Science Foundation Outreach Program suggests that your friends' grades are a good predictor of your own grades.
Well, I think we've known that for a while. I mean, you are obviously influenced by the people you hang around with. And I know that that's one of the... I know when I was a high school principal, we had long talks with parents about that as students were being disciplined, and parents coming in and go, "Well, I never liked so and so anyway," and can you tell me more about this kid? And I'm like, no, I can't. I can't tell you more about him, but what I can say is, you know what, a mother's intuition is probably pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what all parents need to know. If you have that little twinge in your stomach, it's probably right.
Yeah, and we've talked about other research. If we can reinforce one thing with parents is your kids might not demonstrate to you, show you that they're listening, but research shows that in their 20s, they recall everything you said when they were a teenager. So don't stop talking to them. So, all right, this is kind of funny to me. Netflix has been through a whole bunch of ups and downs. I mean, they had a whole kind of marketing oops, and they've tried to come back. Well, what they've done is they've actually come back with their first dramatic series. And they got some big names. They got Kevin Spacey in this, and they've got, if you're a Princess Bride fan, they've got Buttercup in it, Robin Wright. Anyways, it's called House of Cards. What I find very interesting about this, it's about a politician, it's a political drama, who is actually taking on education in Washington. So, sharing some light. Here is how they describe it. The politician collides with unions, lobbyists, and media and his own party. That's the byline.
Okay.
Big hit?
In a Indianapolis 500 sort of way, maybe.
I mean, it's Kaiser Soze.
Waiting for
It's
the
Kevin
wreck.
Spacey.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I don't know. I'm going to watch it the first couple times and see if it's. I mean, it's something I can rent, correct?
Well, it's Netflix, so it must
Okay.
be downloadable, right?
Well, it'd be interesting to watch it to see what it looks like.
So I will too. You know, we've seen a lot of shows about education come and go, and I mean, can you name one that's actually been a great representation and successful?
I was thinking 21 Jump Street.
21 Jump Street.
That was a police thing.
Yep, that's right. Johnny
Boston
Depp.
Public.
Boston Public. What, did it last a year or two?
Something like that.
Yeah.
That was
So
okay.
Yeah, I tried to watch it, but it didn't last.
But it was off by the time you got around to it.
It was. Maybe I can get it on Netflix. All right. We've had some conversation, and you know what? Let's get back. We've had conversation about the Apple Awards, and we need to recognize our large donors. Do they have a term, a title? So the highest level donor, Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, and they were actually recognized with an award from the district for
Right.
just being
Corporate Apple Award, I believe, is what it was called.
for being that private partner
Yes.
that really has stepped up in the district. So thank you very much, Kroenke Sports and Entertainment. Champ Automotive and ISC, two others that really make that night special. So
Right.
what we do in the district is kind of mirrored nationally. There's a National Teacher of the Year award. And last year's winner, and I'm going to butcher this name, Rebecca Milwaukee, who's a science teacher in 7th grade from Burbank, California. She actually gets a 1-year leave of absence from her position to actually nationally tour and talk about what her platform is. And her platform is teachers that are leaders. All right, and how she describes this, and I thought this was amazing. A teacher leader is somebody that has thrown open the door to the classroom and has invited as many people as possible in and asks for feedback.
That's great.
That's a great stance. I mean, it's easy to say. I don't think
It's harder to do.
it really is. I mean, the confidence to have your peers come in and talk about your own profession. I mean, she goes on to say true leaders are not afraid of that conversation, but are opening themselves up within their own careers. I got to tell you, this is a professional attitude. I mean, I don't know what she did to earn Teacher of the Year, but I certainly like her stance.
That's neat.
So, all right, we got a couple minutes here. This one bothers me in a comical way. You ready?
Okay, and am I supposed to guess what comical way it bothers
No,
you?
but we'll have some fun here. The Michigan Civil Rights Department's filed a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education for Civil Rights, asking them to ban all American Indian mascots. All right? They are citing 35 Michigan schools. All right? So here's my question. We have the Washington Redskins. We have the Chicago Blackhawks, right? Now, I'm sure those owners wouldn't mind the publicity if this was to come to them, right? But they haven't, been targeted by this group yet, right?
Multiple colleges.
So let's talk about some of the colleges, all right? If I was at Notre Dame, I would be a Fighting Irish. And I've seen the little, guy with the beard and stuff. Is that infringing upon the academic success of every Irish person in our country?
I certainly hope not, and especially with a name like McMinimee.
What
Be
about
careful around Notre Dame.
what about the Trojans, USC?
Yeah.
I mean, they were hoodwinked by a wooden horse. I mean, that's got
Or
to
the
be
Aztecs,
embarrassing.
San Diego State.
Exactly. What about a Husker? What is a Husker? A hardworking guy who's pulling corn all day for minimum wage in the field?
Cowboys.
What about the Fighting Tarpons? If it wasn't for them, my son wouldn't even know what a tarpon is. So, and last but not least, you got the Wisconsin Badgers, right? All right. I think the Honey Badger ruined that college. All right. Last but not least, we got about a minute. This, I think, is hilarious. All right. So, Wyoming Governor Matt Mead signed legislation last month that basically rendered the state superintendents
Yes.
schools powerless. All right. So what did she do?
Yes.
She came out and basically said, fine, then I'm going to run for your job this fall.
That's right. This will, my in-laws, my wife grew up in Cody. Parents live in Casper now. They were down last weekend. We had a long discussion. It was outstanding about their perceptions of that too. So we are definitely going to revisit that one.
All right.
It'll be really interesting. If she becomes governor, does she put any power back into the state superintendent? Or does she say, you know what, I like this now?
Or does the former governor now go run for that job?
Well, it wouldn't have any power right now. So
All
since
right.
he did this, is he going to be powerless in the state superintendent position?
All right, we got to go. Just one little caveat. No Fighting Irish were hurt in the filming of this radio show.
Thank you. Thank you.